Are you a judgmental person? Do you have good judgment? Let's find out today. And today I'm bringing Danica Patrick back for more of our incredible conversation. I tended to judge people if they weren't putting in the effort that I was, or they weren't working as hard.
I'm judging everybody, but especially myself.
Welcome to the Rachel Hollis Show. Welcome to Monday. Last week we talked about creativity, and I hope you all had a fantastic, very creative Halloween weekend. This week we're talking about the number one enemy of creativity: judgment. I think we have to explore judgment in two ways. I think that we first have to look at how we judge ourselves, and then secondly, we have to look at how judging ourselves leads us to judge others. The way judgment has shown up in my life is earlier in my experience as a mom. And without even consciously thinking about it, I absolutely judged other mothers. I remember this one time I was on an airplane and there was a little boy in front of me on the plane and he was eating a giant bag of gummy worms. And he was wild. He was screaming. He was like running up and down the aisles. He was making so much noise. And I absolutely thought, like, what is this mom's deal? And then I remember I got to baggage claim. And I look at this mom and she's debilitated. She looks like she's about to cry. And I feel so ashamed of myself because I think, Rachel, you don't know her story. You don't know what's going on here, but you saw one thing and you cast judgment on this person, while at the same time you would hope that other parents would not judge you. Why? Because earlier in my career as a mom, I was most hard on myself about how I showed up as a parent. I always think that when we are judging someone else, it should be shining a light on, hey, what's going on with you that you feel like this is something that you get to pick someone else apart for? So think about that as we go through this week and we have this conversation about judgment. How are you judging others? And also, how are you judging yourself? This week, we're talking all about judgment, how we judge others and how we judge ourselves. And in my conversation with Danica Patrick, we got into this pretty deep, and I think her perspective on it is super interesting. So listen in. The world that we live in now is so divisive, and people believe that if someone isn't exactly like you, that gosh, we can't be friends and we can't be in community together, right? And it really says so much more about you as a person than it says about them when you are coming from a place of judgment because they aren't like you. Is that something that you found when you sort of unpack that in yourself? Like, oh yeah, this was me.
Like a story, this is a, vulnerability, sharing something you're not sure you're ready to share. It was about a friend who was uncomfortable around me because she felt like I would judge her for the way that she looked. And not because I did, but because of really how, well, I probably did a little bit, and that's the truth, that I'm judging everybody, but especially myself. Mm-hmm. And so you can't help but judge other people. But I only am judging what I judge in myself because I care so much about how I perform, if I got a workout in that day, if my food was gluten-free, whatever, that's what I'm going to look at in other people because I'm judging it for myself. Does that happen to you?
Absolutely. And I definitely have this high performance, high achiever mentality. And I tended to judge people if they weren't putting in the effort that I was, or they weren't working as hard. And maybe this is me projecting, so please shut me down if this isn't right. But that if you were so driven in and of yourself, if you were so competitive, if those were parts of your being, I wonder if then some sort of judgment may come up in others because on some level they have a freedom that you don't.
I've never thought about it. That's a wonderful thought. And I think there's truth there.
So they don't, oh man, she doesn't look, must be nice, right? Like she doesn't have to push as hard. I wonder what that's like to be able to do those things or eat that or not have to push so hard.
This is why, relationships are mirrors, friendships, relationships, they can show us, what's really true about us. But yeah, it's an inside job.
I heard an expression, and I saw it on social media. It wasn't even like in a book, but someone said that the very first thought that we have about other people is what the world taught us to think. The second thought that we have is who we really are. So they were specifically talking about being a woman and judging another woman. Because if you've ever caught yourself, and I have for sure done this, where my instinct is something judgmental, and then I have that voice in the back of my head that's like, oh my gosh, Rachel, what are you doing? Like, we're not that kind of person. Like, let her have her boobies hanging out. Good for her. Like, live your life, girl. That the first version is not who you really are. And so hopefully we all sort of have that second voice in the back of our head.
That's for sure.
Today, we talked about what judgment is and whether you might consider yourself a judgmental person. Tomorrow, we'll dig into why we have this impulse in the first place. Speaking of good judgment, make sure you're following the Rachel Hollis Show page so you get to hang out with me every morning.